Well, welcome to you. Welcome back. We've had a week's break in our breaking open the scriptures because life sometimes gets in the way. But good to see you back. And Kelvin and Judy, welcome aboard. And here we are on St. James Day, really, but stepping outside the ordinary Sundays. And one of these little passages that comes up from time to time from Matthew 20. Anne, give us a little bit of an insight.
Okay, well, this is the only time this passage appears in the lectionary. So if you don't celebrate James and John, you never actually get to hear this on a Sunday morning. But I find it fascinating that when we are called to celebrate a couple of saints, they choose a passage which portrays them as a couple of ambitious and delusional dreamers hiding behind their mother. Well, I love that. I think it's a wonderful thing that we've inherited from our Jewish foundations, where the heroes of our faith are incredibly fallible and therefore very real. So just a couple of things about this passage. One is that it's pretty well a parallel set of stories to what happened back in chapter 16. So back there, Jesus talks about his upcoming death, and then Peter does that famous, glorious blunder, which results in Jesus saying, "Get behind me, Satan." And then Jesus follows that up by telling them all that if they're going to follow him, they have to take up their cross. So that's kind of that little set of stories. And then just a few chapters later, Jesus once again talks about his coming death. And this time, James and John step in with an enormous blunder. Jesus seems to be a bit gentler with them, maybe because they're not actually going to the extent of saying, "Jesus, you've got to do this," or "Jesus, you've got to do that." It's a request. But still, they've blundered. And Jesus follows that up once again with saying, "If you're going to follow me," hello, can you get this? "If you're going to follow me, the path is one of service and servanthood and not glory." I also don't think it's accidental that the passage that immediately follows on from this story of these two daft, delusional men is Jesus healing two physically blind men. So that's quite kind of neat. But it looks as if it's being established as a pattern among Jesus's followers. So block out things that you don't want to hear, delude yourself into believing that somehow following Jesus is a path to success and ease, and Jesus having to patiently or sternly, but always with compassion, drag them back onto that dusty and unglorious path of servanthood that he's walking. So that's a bit of background.
What a good thing in the contemporary church. We never need dragging back, and we've got it all absolutely right. Kelvin, there's got to be some challenges in amongst that.
Well, for me, the challenge was looking at Anne and looking at the pictures behind her. All my predecessors as bishop dressed up in their finery. And I think of the size of the chair, which was mine in our cathedral. And the fact that always I got to be in the most important part of the procession. And this dynamic is there where we cannot seem to help bringing in these badges of grandiosity and glory and separating one person from another when Jesus was on about something quite different. And Sunday is St. James's Day, which means that it's a holy year in Spain. St. James is the patron saint of Spain, of course, and so there'll be special services in Santiago de Compostela. The Camino Santiago isn't really a Spanish thing, it's a French thing. The French established it in about 900 or 1000 AD as a way of colonizing the land over the Pyrenees. They introduced what was essentially a French saint and a French cult to keep all the Spaniards in line. And it was originally an item of colonization and oppression and aggrandizement and all of those things that Jesus seemed to be so against. And yet, when you walk the Camino Santiago, the first lesson every single person learns is get rid of stuff. Whatever you're carrying in your backpack, you've got too much. Halve it, get rid of it. travel as light as you can. Only take as much as is necessary to keep you alive, not one bit more. So there is the whole paradox of this passage, and the fact of all those, my own pictures on the wall there, wearing a suit which cost an arm and a leg, and this challenge to me is that this paradox is still there, and I buy into it.
Judy and beloved cat.
No, I know she's being very naughty. Anyway, I think that it's unfair of us to, to think how stupid James and John are, because, I mean, it was just so unlike what they thought the Messiah would be and what the Messiah's task would be. I mean, they just wanted this powerful and figure that could save the Israelites, the Jews, from the Romans in this particular case. And here they had somebody who was presenting something that was so completely different. And even although they were with him and saw all these wonderful things that he did and said, and loved him, it was still incredibly difficult for them to change that mindset. And I think it's difficult for us to change the mindset too. Kelvin, you might quite have liked that chair and that nice suit and that position.
So
however, I thought you were pretty servant-like anyway, so you did pretty well. I'm glad you edited this.
Glorious thing of in many ways looking for Jesus in the wrong place. And Anne, is the passage challenging for you?
Yeah, thanks, Judy. It's always necessary to have the reminder that, yes, I might have said that, they were stupid and blunted and thing, but I would have done exactly the same probably. And that's a good reminder. And yes, I think, again, you've put your thumb on it. It's the need for the church to somehow be able to completely overturn the worldview of the society we live in. To be able to say, actually, we're not going to be upwardly mobile, we're going to be downwardly mobile, and we're going to try to be downwardly mobile, which sounds totally crazy. And the Gospels make it clear it sounded completely crazy to the first disciples too. And I think we're so good at finding reasons to justify why, yes, it's in God's interest for us to move upwards or to increase our income or to move into a position of more importance or influence, pure godly reasons. But I think this is a challenge to that, and should really make us look very, very carefully at our whole mindset.
It really is all about humility, isn't it? That we have to be so humble and so accepting and so giving of especially the poor and the mentally ill and those in need and those who are undesirable and aren't going to further our social standing at all.
Absolutely not, and that's a huge challenge, especially in the history of the Anglican Church. Elitism has sat very much upon our shoulders, and good news amongst all this.
I think essentially Jesus's patience. I guess I really do love that story that follows on about the two blind men being healed. It's as if it's giving hope to us that even if we do get on the wrong track and misunderstand, Jesus does keep patiently working with us and does do it with compassion. And there is hope that we might actually be able to focus and see the way Jesus does, if we just keep trying.
And we could all do a little bit of compassion when we get it wrong, and that's comforting. Judy, do you find good news amongst us, kind of a muck up by James and John and Jesus' response?
I think it's probably a huge relief that we don't have to be pursuing power and glory and that we can be just humble, and just our focus can be on blessing people and on serving them, and I think that's probably makes it very healthy and not such a burden.
Well, Kelvin, stepping down from that illustrious line in which you've stood, and then finding good news in the ordinary, which is, I think, where Jesus wants to take us at that moment.
Well, I think of, the mother of these guys. And what does she want? She wants the very best for her sons. Her motives are absolutely pure. And as were Peter's and all these other disciples. And Jesus isn't condemning them. What he's doing is he's saying, you want these things which are important for any soul, but you're looking in the wrong places. And for me, the good news is that there is actually a right place to look. Now, it's one that we don't like looking because we don't think we're going to find what we want there. But Jesus tells us, look here and you'll find your heart's desire. This is the best place to look. And the good news for me is that there is an answer. There is a place to go. And Jesus is continually working on me to help me to want what's best for me.
A place to go. There's a lot of signs that we're looking for it fairly desperately in the world around us. So, Anne, that's kind of a so what. Can you see so what's for this passage?
Don't be a pushy parent. I think everything we've been saying really can be turned into so what's, but I guess one other thing for me is if saints like James and John aren't necessarily important in the world to come, who is? And, they followed Jesus, they gave up everything. James at least was martyred, what more could God ask for? And yet we get the sense that the ones who will be first are the people we don't notice, the ones that we never hear about, the toilet cleaners, the bedridden people who've prayed all their lives from their little rooms, the kind of countless nameless faces who've humbly served and never got any glory. So my so what is to remember that and to try to see them and to try again to change my focus, to change my sight so that I see other people as well as the path I should be following more the way that Jesus does.
Okay, thanks. Judy, so what that James and John got it wrong and Jesus is compassionate? So what as we live in our world?
The so what is that we do get it wrong, and where we look for satisfaction and a fullness of life is looking at people in situations that turn out to be so surprisingly blessed.
The blessing in unexpected and humble places. Kelvin, so what for you?
So for me, the so what is to be aware of my own motives and the times when I'm looking in the wrong place, and to realize that the times which I find most frustrating or where I seem to be eternally frustrated are probably the great learning experiences for me, and an invitation to look in the right place and ask the right questions for a change.
Well, therein lies a challenge and a so what indeed. Good to have you back with us again, all of you, and to be breaking open the word on, I've learned something especially for the Spanish people, a very special day, but one of the great saints' days, and finding the holiness of the saints in their being slightly mistaken and prepared to start again. Kelvin, Anne, Judy, thank you very much.
Thank you.